Hi guys, it's Courtney and welcome back. Today I'm making a card using Pink and Main-Scentsational stamp set for my design team project for Scrapping for Less. I started by die cutting a piece of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock using a stitched rectangle die and arranging my masks just to get an idea of how I want my placement. I'm stamping with Lawn Fawn's jet black ink because I'll be doing some Copic coloring and using Inkadinka masking paper, along with liquid frisket for the smaller areas. Once all of my images were stamped and masked, I took Post-it note tape and lined that up using my grid mat there and just masked off the top of the card so that I can do some distress ink blending on the bottom where the grass is. I'm using Oxide here in the color Bundled Sage, and for this small area, I'm just using the one color. Be careful when you're peeling up the Post-it note tape. Some of your masks might start to come up along with it, so just go really slow. And the Distress Oxide inks do stay wet a little bit longer than the traditional Distress inks. So give it a minute or two to put your Post-it note tape back down because it won't stick if the ink is still wet. I didn't give it that time, so I ended up having to get a new piece. For the sky, I started off with Squeezed Lemonade and put that in the middle, and then blended out with Wild Honey, and then Abandoned Coral just on the corners. For my little skunks, I'm using my warm grays for the black areas. I'm not actually using a black marker. And I start by going in with my lightest color, which is a W3, and just putting down where my darkest colors will be. In that center, where that white strip on his head is, wouldn't necessarily be a shadow, but I am going to be adding some darker color there just to make that area look white, because I will be filling that in with cool gray markers. Once my lightest color was down, I moved on to my darkest color, which is the W7. It's pretty dark. It's very, very close to black, and I added in my shadows where my darkest areas would be, paying attention to where his head covers up part of his tail and where his chin will cover up part of his body. Those areas would have shadows. Once that was down, I moved on to my medium color, which is my W5, and blended that out a bit, and then went on to my lightest color. I'm just going to show you the one skunk here because I colored all three the same, and then we'll move on to the rest of the coloring. For this little log, I did the same thing as I did with the skunks. I start with my lightest color, which is the E55, and lay down where my darkest areas will be to saturate the paper a little bit and kind of give me a plan as to where those dark areas will be. Then I go into my darkest color, which is the E59, and then onto my medium, and then back to my lightest. Paying attention to where the shadows would be created, like where the skunk is sitting, there would be a small shadow underneath him, and that middle skunk, his tail kind of overlays on that log, so he's gonna create, that's gonna create a shadow as well. I'm using pinks to color in the flower as well as the little bow for that middle skunk. My darkest is actually a red, just to add a little bit of dimension. But again, I'm going in with my lightest color, then my darkest, medium, then light again. I initially was going to color this flower yellow, but figured it would blend in too much with that background of the sky. So I decided to go with pinks. For the little mushrooms, I was initially going to go around all those little dots on the mushrooms, and then just decided that I would go in later with a gel pen to fill in those little spots. So I ended up just covering the entire thing with the same color. Once all my coloring was done, I added a little bit of detail with some gel pens. This is a green gel pen. It's actually a souffle pen. It gives it a little bit of dimension, but it's also opaque. And that stem for the flower is actually black because of the ink. So I went over that with the green to make that a green stem. And then I went in with a white jelly roll pen and filled in those spots on those mushrooms. Once my panel was complete, I went ahead and stamped the sentiment using VersaFine Onyx Black ink in the top right corner. I then took another piece of Nina Solar White cardstock and cut that down to just slightly smaller than an A2 size card. I used Tombow Mono Multi Glue to go ahead and adhere that to my card panel. And once my ink was dry from my sentiment, I used that same glue to go ahead and adhere my panel onto the center of that white card base. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great day.